Minutes past 8 o'clock. You're tuned in to Focus on Government and Development. We're broadcasting live from the studios of DBS Radio on Victoria Street, Roseau. We're also live on Cairo FM and the various social media platforms. Welcome to all of you tuned into the program. My name is Dion Duran-Smith. This is our Thursday evening program, Focus on Government and Development, designed with you in mind to keep you informed and involved with the work of this government. As we say on this program, your government is working for you, and we want to keep you in the know about the many government initiatives, programs, projects underway, those about to come on stream, all of it designed to improve your lives. Our guest this evening is Honorable Jullan Defoe. He is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy, with special responsibility for fisheries and blue economy. In government circles, Honorable Defoe is referred to as the Blue Economy Champion. And you'll find out exactly why over the course of this program, I am sure. Honorable Defoe, good evening to you and welcome to the program. Welcome to Focus on Government and Development.
Good evening, Dion, and I'm happy to be here on Focus on Development.
Go ahead.
Yes. So to open the program, I would like to say delighted to be here, but also to begin extend my appreciation, especially for the people of my area, the Pitsavan constituency, and I won't name names for fear of missing one out. As many communities make up the constituency, it's large geographically. My fisher folks, of course, which are my friends, and they form the basis of my career. The other practitioners in the marine environment, in the whole maritime field, in the water sports. The seafarers on the cargo ships, everyone engaged in the sector which covers where the theme is today, fisheries and the blue economy. And also, for our listeners tonight who are tuned on to listen to what is the scope of development going forward, what is the strategy, what is the blue economy about, what is the fisheries sector about, and it's an important subsector of the agriculture sector. Usually, it's not mentioned, but I just want to say, once we speak agriculture, we always mean fisheries, which is a subsector of the agriculture sector.
Yes, I must tell you that personally I'm very interested to find out so much more about the fishery sector because, as you rightly said, it is not an area that gets a lot of airplay, so I'm certainly looking forward to that. But before that, Honorable Defoe, I'm sure you can appreciate that many of our listeners may not be too familiar with you, coming out of a general election and just 2 months into your term of office. I want to spend some time, as I did last week, with Honorable Roy, getting to know you a little bit more for the benefit of myself and our listeners, your background, and a little bit just generally, who is Honorable Jullan Defoe?
Well, of course, this is, of all the questions that may be asked today, this is probably the hardest one because I really don't like to speak about myself, and I would rather maybe a short survey was done and then you'd come and tell me, well, Jullan, this is what we have found out about the people who know you, this is who you are. But all in all, I will still give a little background. I am from the community of Font Saint-Jean, which was a thriving community in the 80s, 90s, and in the early 2000s and onwards. Not so much so now for various reasons. But it is a sector where people rely on fishing and agriculture to some extent, mostly in the bay oil in industry. And in terms of profession, at a very early age, I joined the Fisheries Division, and that was in December 12th, 2000. I know the exact date time when I joined. So I had a career spanning about 22 years, of which I could say I'm very grateful to the government. And so not only for the opportunity of a job, but the endless training I have received. I would say around the globe, some of them short term, some of them long term, very extensive. High level training, spanning on almost all continents. And so, there is, I always say that I will be internally grateful for this exposure, training, and which has created the person that I am. And we say, who am I? The people who know me from Capuchin to Kashaku, which I usually would cover. And because of my dedication to service and serving the people there. And I could say I'm well known. So I would rather maybe when you travel around, you ask them. But they would tell you, in their own mind that I'm someone who is very humble, who is very service oriented, and who is very dedicated to any task that is assigned to me or have set my mind to accomplish.
Does the 22 years you spent working in the fisheries sector, does that speak to your passion for fisheries as an area?
Yes, of course. It speaks to my passion. And even today, I told that I say that to young officers, not only in the fisheries sector, but other sectors. If you have a job and you're not passionate about it, you might as well leave it, because you'll be miserable for the rest of your life. And this is why people ask me, how old are you? Defoe, I know you so long, or you look. It's because of passion, joy, love. I am always a happy person and jovial, because, for most people in their lifetime, their job is the greatest part of their stress factor. People say, I'm stressed, work is stressing me. But this has never been my case. I've always worked hard. I've always enjoyed the job. And more so, I've always enjoyed challenges. And in the fisheries sector, we have overcome many challenges. I mean, most people speak about in recent times Maria and Erica, but in the fisheries sector, we have faced even much more challenges, even going back earlier than that. I mean, I remember in 2007, Hurricane Dean, the fisheries sector was significantly damaged. Government made a significant contribution then. And just to only find out that 1 year later, in 2008, we had Hurricane Oma, which devastated the fishing fleet on the west coast. Government again came in and provided 100% support. So, people speak about then Eric and Maria, but the sector has been, receiving, impacts from tropical storms and hurricanes, and government has interceded every time. So I've overseen these things. I have implemented programs. I've handled a lot of these programs. So, I know what we have done and what we have. So where this industry was and where it is now and where we are striving to go.
Actually, that provides a pretty good summary of where we want to go with this discussion, some of the challenges you face and how we've overcome and what we're looking to implement to continue to do better. But I want to take my time and talk about the fact that you are a new minister, although you are certainly not new to the sector, but you are a new minister. Can you talk to us about what your first 2 months in office have been like overseeing the fishery sector?
Yes. So while you say I appreciate you on that I'm not new to this sector, but it adds an added chip on your shoulder, that you being a practitioner in the field of fisheries and the wider blue economy, that the expectation is greater from you when you have achieved a higher office. So people will say to you, no, for all of these things you say on the chief that you find that you're hitting policy barriers and so on that you're not able to do. Now you're in the hot seat. And now you expect you to get it done. And there are quite a number of key things. I was trying to push when I was a chief fisheries officer and just a normal practitioner. And now I think I am in the ideal spot and place to influence and to educate my colleagues. Because as you say, fisheries and the marine environment is a field that may be far-fetched from a lot of people's mind. And so it is. And when you have decisions being made, if you don't have somebody in the room that can explain and articulate and show your colleagues the benefits in exactly what you're speaking, the practitioners in the field, the fishers, what they experience, and how their daily lives, their inputs, the cost of investment of what they use, which is so much different than other subsectors in the agriculture. Then they get an appreciation for probably why certain policies are needed, why we need to maybe more investment in certain sectors which were before, because they did not have that level of information in the policy realm, that it could have easily been sidelined or just oversight.
So, based on what you just said, the idea that people are saying, well, you're now in the hot seat, as you put it, can you speak also? I'm sure since you took office, you've gone maybe back to Fonseca and spoken to your fishers and around the country. What are you hearing from them? What are they telling you about some of their challenges?
Well, first to begin with, I say I have not gone back. I have never left. I have never left. And this is one thing with me. I love the community where I'm from. And it's a fishing community. The view of the marine environment soothes your soul. I will tell you that. Whatever day I have in Roseau, as long as I get near the Dubic coast, everything goes away. So I am relieved. Yes. So especially if your home community has a fishing background, the expectation even starts from there in terms of investment, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of going forward, development. Also, I've been engaging in the past several weeks with the ministry on a farmers and fishers talk. Well, fishers where there are fishing communities, and I'm meeting all of my fisher friends again, from my previous jobs, and many fishers too have also. Many farmers too have also investment in the fishing sector. So some of them may not necessarily go out to sea, but they diversify some of their investments into fishing. So someone may be operating the boat. So on this tour, I was able to meet many farmers who are also invested in the fisheries sector, and discuss with them and rekindle, the discussion that we have had, and explain to them the way forward for the fisheries sector here on out.
Okay, so Minister, from now that we've set the base, from your perspective, your assessment, your vast experience, what are some of the more important issues you think which are affecting the fisheries subsector and are at the top of your priority list for attention?
Yeah. So if you noticed earlier, I mentioned of several storms. So the impact and the effects of climate change. Of course, with climate change, we expect storms to be more frequent. We expect them to be stronger. And even outside of storms, we have swells. We have our usual swells between the winter season in North America. And sometimes these are not hurricanes, but they do have significant impacts on the coastlines and even assets of fishers. So this is usually beyond our control. So what we would do, we need to implement mitigation measures. And that's the next thing. Within the marine world, usually investments are very expensive, 3-4 times the cost of investments on land. So mitigating against climate change and landing sites, the construction of modern facilities such as breakwaters, be it using large rocks to form groins, or be it concrete structures. But any interventions in this marine environment towards protection of fish landing sites, fisheries infrastructure, are usually very difficult and expensive to implement, and sometimes even so technically, because many times we don't have too many technical companies that can do this sort of marine work. So this is one thing from the infrastructure side. We do have other challenges such as marketing. Again, this can directly lead to past effects of hurricane, especially Maria, which estimated significantly destroyed the Roseau Fisheries complex. And now it is newly rehabilitated, but I think we will speak on its rehabilitation a little longer. So this sort of crippled our marketing hope that we had. And we had quite a number of initiatives on play in 2017 prior to September, and we were hoping to leapfrog the fisheries sector in terms of taking our fish further afield in the U.S. market and the European market. And then we have these significant setbacks. And we do have other issues such as, improving the post-harvest handling of fish. So these are technical things that we can address through training. And we had done tremendous work, and we will continue to do so. And certain key services and amenities across landing sites, such as the availability of ice, is one of the most critical things. Ice is also as important as fuel. So I said post-hygiene. in some communities, even if we may not have major infrastructures like Marigot, Roseau, Portsmouth, but areas where you can have the basic hygiene and sanitation for receiving that catch. Because if we're going to have a strategy moving forward for exports, we need where the fish is landed to have at least the basic service. So these are some key little challenges we have had, which we have started to address, and we will continue to address. Of course, as you know, fishing can be capital intensive. It not can be, I should say, it is a capital intensive project. As the average cost of an engine now, let's say 100 horsepower, which is very normal in the fisheries industry, costs about $30,000. The average boat costs around $35,000 to $40,000. So, just a package of investment to begin with can easily cost you $100,000. Compare a farmer with a plot of land, and you may buy some fertilizer and so on. May cost you around $5,000 or so. So, we're not comparing both industry, but just to say it is capital intensive. So, access to financing, low cost financing, although there are some programs available at the Aid Bank, but again, some fishers have had difficulty in the past in accessing those schemes that are made available by government. So these are from a few areas. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's some of the key areas that we would need to tackle. And it's not that we are doing, but we need to do more. There is always more to do.
Okay. Some of the areas that you mentioned are areas that I really want to delve into a little bit more, and I will start with the mention of hygiene. So, for example, we've noticed that fish vending happens anywhere, on the roadside, on the beaches. Do you have a plan in place, or are you developing a plan to address this to ensure that fish is sold in a safe manner?
Yeah, so we have been doing that for a very long time. Even from the start of my career, we have been engaged in significant capacity building and education in promoting the safe vending of fish, and especially fresh fish, because most of our fish we consume is in the fresh state. And we have worked with fish vendors, we have worked with fishers themselves. But there is always a key component which is missing, and so we have always relied on voluntary compliance. But I wish to say tonight that sometimes voluntary compliance only takes you so far. And so we have not had the necessary regulations, to really make people do what they're supposed to do. So in draft regulations, we have a lot of the key mechanisms, that would, not a whip, but, this is time in this 21st century. And, a lot of people going abroad and comparing to the standards, that we implement things. And we don't implement things to be a burden on the people who are doing the vending. Food safety, hygiene, sanitation is important for the entire public and consumer base, because you want to ensure that when you purchase a product, it is safe to eat. This is the ultimate goal. It's not about burdening the poor little lady from Layu or the lady from Sufres coming here. This is really not what it is about. It is to make sure that the person purchasing your product is buying a product which is safe, and the assurance of that food being safe is because of the practices this vendor has employed from the time that they have purchased their fish. So it is actually a chain. So it's not just from the vendor, from the fishers to the vendor to the consumer.
You also mentioned the need to increase export capacity, to increase export. Can you speak to any investments or approaches which are planned for the fisheries subsector to increase output?
Okay, so there are two things. We want to increase exports, but also the value, because sometimes people don't make the correlations between a value. We can ship the same volume with a higher value, and one thing that we didn't mention at the beginning: fisheries is an extractive industry, so we do not go on a piece of land unless if you're doing aquaculture and so on. But primarily, most of our fish, 99%, comes from extracting fish from the wild. So this is the wild caught fish. And so the question of sustainable is key, even before when we speak to marketing. But we can also go back to that question. And so marketing for us is the first thing that we have value. So we want to make sure that our products that we're sending out, we are getting the best value. And the best value at this current moment comes from the sale of fresh fish. Okay, so this has always been our primary focus. with frozen as secondary. So what have we done? Again, we have done many. This is one of the main reasons why the Roseau Fisheries Complex was built. And I say that out of the three because we have Marigot, we have Portsmouth, but Roseau was always meant to be the marketing hub. So this is why you have much more amenities and services there, such as cold storage, the availability of ice, and a fish processing area. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we had several players in play ready to move that sector forward. When first we were hit by Erica, so therefore, and this was significant in the fact that at that time we had air cargo coming into Dominica weekly, which was a Marijet.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, I tell you, the value of fish really in the international market is fresh. So we were at that point on the verge of having a ready market in the US to ship via a Marijet. So a ship would be shipped out from Dominica today, Thursday, and it would guarantee that it would arrive in the Miami market tomorrow, Friday. So my Marijet would move Dominica, Puerto Rico to Miami. So post Erica, Marijet has not resumed air service. So we do not have this air cargo. We have thought of the direct airlines, AA, coming from direct flights, but even that in investigation does not have the sufficient capacity to have extra cargo, such as large volumes of fish. So this has been one impediment that we have had. So a lot of things was put in place. This has been halted now by Maria. But of course, we are exploring other alternatives, containerized large shipments of frozen. So I said the preferred was fresh, but frozen can also work. It's just that for the exporter, the margin is less. Mm-hmm. But it's an option that we are willing to go with until, thank God, that we will have the establishment or the completion of the international airport. So this is one strategy for the international market. But of course, ongoing as we speak, we are serving the regional market, St. Martin, St. Croix, Tortola, and this has developed a very unique business, an opportunity for what we so-called our middlemen. So traditionally, you would have fishers coming with their catch, and they themselves would engage in marketing of their own catch, loading it on vehicles, trying to go everywhere to sell. We now have a developing sector of middlemen who will be waiting on the fish landing site and to take this fish from the fishers, then thus eliminating that additional work that they had of going around themselves. And most time these middlemen pay cash, so the fishers are very happy. So these are the areas we have to improve on the transportation for the interregional trade. Again, this is an area which has been identified for improvement, even for agricultural products. So it's not a unique vessel for fish. So it is the same issues that the movement agricultural products are facing. More ships, better ships to move our products forward. So once we can have improvement within the maritime sector of available ships, of course we can drastically increase the volumes we are sending out now by these middlemen.
You've mentioned the construction of the Roseau and Marigot fisheries complexes, and we know that in November these facilities were formally commissioned. I wonder, how does your ministry plan to maximize the use of these facilities to meet some of the very objectives you've identified?
Well, we don't plan to maximize it. We plan to optimize it. I mean, that's the goal, because we plan to optimize it, and that's the use. Because people always complain, and you hear the general public say, especially people who oppose, you have these big areas here and so on. So people's assessment of these facilities are usually based on the size of these facilities and not really focus on the services that they provide. And so for Roseau will be the main hub for marketing, and there are things that will be coming that will be put in place in the very near future, and that will make these things happen. So Roseau has because of the key services, as I earlier mentioned, that it possesses. At this facility, we have a new fish processing room, and people that are within the fisheries sector, both locally and abroad, has looked at it and has approved it, and as a facility that can be used to move significant volumes of fish and process significant volumes of fish for packing in its fresh state. And we do have Portsmouth and Marigot. So Portsmouth and Marigot are meant to feed the Roseau Fisheries Complex, as collecting areas, as collecting hubs, because they do not have the cold storage capacity that Roseau had. So they have their functions, and so they are not meant to compete with each other. They are strategically meant to support the Roseau Fisheries Complex, where fishers will come in with their catch. They have adequate ice. They have coolers which will be transported. Also, we have refrigeration trucks that can go around and collect this fish in a proper hygienic manner, because these are refrigerated trucks to control the temperature of this fish, transport it to Roseau, where it will be processed and packaged. When I say process, process does not always necessarily mean, loins or deboning or smoking, primary processing. That means making sure the fish is packed properly in ice, ready to be shipped, or if it's just removing the head and tail. So all of these forms are processing. And once the form of the fish is changed, that's the definition of processing. It does not always mean, putting it into another form, which sometimes people mistake processing with value addition.
Mm-hmm. I'm still going back to some of the things you mentioned for the sake of clarity. So, for example, you've spoken about the impact of successive weather systems. Erica, Maria, you went as far back as...
Hurricane Dean in 2007.
Exactly.
Hurricane Oma in 2008. Significant investment was put in by the government to return the livelihoods of these fishes. And I was there, I know, I implemented them. Millions.
So we've seen the sector take hard hits during various weather systems. So I wonder if you could speak to us specifically about how we've rebounded, especially in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. Where are we now in terms of our output within the fisheries subsector?
Okay, so over the past 20 years, if I just use this time frame, of course I can go further back, we operate in an artisanal fisheries sector, small boats, day boats, several hours a day. Our average output was about 1,000 tons annually. So we'll use this as an average, up, down a little, about 1,000 ton on average. And the impact of in 2017, after we had Maria, so, you don't assess the month. At the end, we had about a 30% reduction in our output at the end of the year based on our assessment, because our fisheries division do collect statistical information from key landing sites, so we are able to do so. So 30%. But so this is 17, and in 2018 we will, because Erica was late in 2017, so 2018 too, we had a significant reduction again, and in terms of the output. So in 2017 we had about 25%, in 2018 around 28%, less than the 1,000 tons. But we saw after government started implementing measures, and so you had the cash grant from the World Bank funded scheme, where we gave full-time and part-time fishers some cash grants, and 10,000 and 3,000, and you also saw the distribution of outboard engines to fishers who had their boats or had repaired their boats. So we distributed about 108 outboard engines, and then from there on you could see the impact in the sector. So we have been growing gradually up until this moment. So currently in the assessment of 2021 of all data, we were at just 3% off the 1,000 back to 1,000 average annual landings. So I would assume in 2022, I am very confident with what I have seen on the ground, the investment from fishers themselves, and that we will easily break back to pre-Maria level, and we're looking to go upwards from there through additional investments government will put into the fisheries sector.
That's very interesting, and we certainly look towards those numbers continuing to increase. Honorable Minister, I feel that I need to get from you your appreciation of the Prime Minister's goal for the agriculture sector of output of $700 million contribution to GDP by 2030. as the Minister with specific responsibility for fisheries, how do you see the fisheries subsector contributing to the achievement of that target?
Yeah, I mean, the pronouncement of this policy objective by the Prime Minister was very welcomed, because even before his pronouncement, I was programmed already mentally in all aspects, and with the fisheries team, for us to really had made a major move, an upscale in terms of contribution of fisheries to GDP. Although I must say, in the fisheries world, we have had a significant problem with our economists in how the fisheries contribution GDP is calculated. So we have always felt that the manner in the calculation is done economically, it does not fare well for the fisheries sector, and we have always contributed much more. But that's for another discussions among economists, because it does not really consider the large impact fisheries plays in terms of national food security and social welfare and so on. So that's for maybe another discussion. But based on the ECCB, fisheries has been way below 1% for a very long time, 0.55 on average. And so, again, as I mentioned from the beginning, fisheries being a key subsector of the agriculture sector. Of course, once this policy directive came out from the PM, we were looking at ways in which this can be done, and it should be done, and fisheries should play its meaningful role in achieving the 700 million by 2030. And so we have some figures and projections of how this can be done, and so we feel that fisheries can improve drastically its GDP, by 7 point maybe 8%, because that is the kind of contribution we'd have to make to achieve it. Because currently, on base figures, because we have only 7 years left, thereabout, and so fisheries would have to contribute about $47 million to $48 million into the sector every year. So now that is a dramatic increase. So that points out to around $7 million yearly if we are to achieve it up to 2030, and we must appreciate, and this is a discussion that the general public has to understand and has to open up, that the conventional ways of doing things will have to change. It is not possible for us to grow this sector and create more livelihood, meaningful employment, greater contribution to the economy without exploiting the non-traditional areas. And as I mentioned earlier, we operate an artisanal fleet. So we have to look more, and we use a very small area of our EEZ, which is our exclusive economic zone. So that is one thing. Our exclusive economic zone is 200 nautical miles east and west. Although, because of boundary issues, we really do not have all on the west, but it is still significant. In addition to that, under the United Nations Law of the Sea Convention, we do have access to the high seas. And this is another area of high potential for significant, economic returns from this area, which we have not have access to. So these are the conversations that have to open up. As I told you, our fishers feel just about average or no more than 40 nautical miles, and I told you we have 200. So you can see this vast ocean which is unexplored, which is not being fished. So I would not say no, but the discussion has to come.
But Minister, this sounds highly technical to me. So I'm wondering, how do you get that information to your fishers in a way that they can appreciate? Because you talk about the fact that attitudes will have to change, and they will have to change their approaches.
So I will give you the specific, because at this moment, like many countries, Dominica do not engage in access agreements, which is provided in law, actually, in the Fisheries Act number 11 of 1987. It gives us the authority or the power, the minister responsible for fish, to enter into access agreements with foreign countries or even entities in foreign countries in terms of fisheries exploitation. And so these are areas that, as I said, even if we have in law, but we have not explored. As you know, we do not have any vessels on island that goes out to sea for more than a day. And And there are many reasons for that.
This
could take an entire discussion of its own as to the reasons, but we can also look at the partners and partnerships. So it does not necessarily have to be, indigenously owned. We can look at partnerships and other areas. So I just want to say there are vast opportunities that has to be explored. Some of them will be sensitive. Some of them will take a lot of consultation with our own local fishers, before we venture into it. And so these are these are some of the opportunities that exist in fisheries. Of course, we have not even touched into other opportunities, such as mariculture,
and the blue economy,
and aquaculture.
Yeah, but before we get into that, earlier on I think you made some reference to the existence of fisheries regulation. Is that something your ministry is looking to develop to improve your monitoring and regulation of the fishery sector?
Yes. So, as you know, we have the Fisheries Act, as I mentioned earlier, 11 of 87. And, Section 38 of 38 of that Act, gives the minister authority or the Act to issue regulations. And so it is something that has been prepared for a long time. And we have had several versions from 2004, 2013, and even the latest version revised in 2023. And I just want to say for the general public, especially our fishing community, and we have had extensive consultation, that most people sometimes fear regulations. And they feel that regulation is a whip. Where in fisheries, really, it is really not the case. And I come back to inherently because we are harvesting a wild resource, a resource which is common to all mankind, because most of the species that we harvest it's pelagics, which are migratory. They pass between all boundaries. So it is incumbent upon on all nations of the world to employ best practices, international standards, to make sure that these stocks of fish that we rely on are conserved. So implementing national regulations for conservation and management is just a step forward in demonstrating to the world, just as we have declared to be, first climate resilient country. So we need to demonstrate these things. We need to show that we care for our resources, that we are managing our resources extensively. And not only that, it is important for our international partners that we are trying to get investments from. Because one of the first things they will ask you, what are you doing to conserve and protect our resources? And it has nothing to do with keeping resources away from the stakeholders, which is often a thought that people have, that they think that regulation is going to constrain them. It doesn't. It improves them. It allows us to access more, because more and more the international community is doing things in a collaborative manner. We must manage in a collaborative manner. So if you as a small island nation cannot demonstrate that you are playing your part towards the greater international good, so sometimes it's very difficult for you to attract the sort of investment that you want from first world countries to assist you in your fisheries. And also on the other part, if we have to go into bigger investments in terms of accessing the high seas, or having partnership agreement to access the high seas, we must demonstrate that we have the instruments in place, we have the standards in place, we are part of the international convention that allow us to cooperate and share information on data, on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and all of these mechanisms, because right now the global space, has to act as one in terms of resource conservation and management. So I am saying these things that while we have to go to the next step, but we must do these things in place, and we have to start incrementally. Dominica has done quite a bit, which sometimes people aren't aware of. In 2016, we signed onto the agreement for port state measures, which is called FAO Port State Measures Agreement, and which is legally binding, where we have dedicated ourselves to fighting illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing internationally. And also we have supported other non-binding instruments and so on. But there are still some additional ones that we need to pay attention to. And again, this is I think, one of the reasons, why I am here. And knowing these things and knowing the deficiencies that we had before, and I should now be a champion, and bring it to my fellow colleagues in the policy realm to let them understand that, hey, these are things that we need to do if we are to go to the next step, in especially in fisheries.
I got it. So let's shift our attention to the blue economy, which is still a relatively new concept to us in the region. It shouldn't be because we are surrounded by it, but as a concept, it's still relatively new. So can you explain to our listeners what is the blue economy, its components, its features?
Well, the blue economy is a new concept, but it's not new. So we rebrand things from time to time and rename it, and it's good. So it keeps it gives relevance to the marine sector. But the blue economy encompasses all of sectors that uses the marine environment for its economic benefit. And what it is essentially, it is the sustainable use of the marine environment for economic gains and for improved and additional economic gains. Because traditionally, you have what we call the traditional sectors. You have fishing, you have maritime, you have water sports, and so on. So these things have always been there. The concept of the blue economy is, can we get more out of the marine environment than what there is traditionally, but at the same time, doing so in a sustainable manner that we do not harm this very same marine environment. And so this is where the discussion on a broader level of wave energy and even wind farms in the marine environment, and in other areas that we have not even spoke about, such as prospecting for those who prospect for oil, those who are prospecting for other resources on the seabed, even research and technology applications, pharmaceuticals from resources from the seabed and even the coral reefs and so on. So this non-traditional area. So this is what really is the thrust of the economy in the non-traditional areas. We know shipping has always been there. We know fishing has always been there. It is these non-traditional areas. How do we utilize this space? Mariculture, large expanse of coast that we are not using for anything. Can we grow something there to add, to give additional livelihood opportunities to the people who live on the coast? So this is the conversation, and in a nutshell, this is what it is. The additional things, the things that we have not been doing traditionally, that we need to tap into it to create that additional revenue from the marine environment. All
right. Now that we've established that, how do you plan to champion the objectives of the blue economy in actual ways? What plans do you have, for example, with mariculture, which you just mentioned, and I did do some research, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I found out it is concerned with the cultivation of plants and animals for food, but in water. Where are we headed with some of these things in Dominica?
Okay. First things first, let's start with one most people are familiar with as an example, because it's better for them to understand. Sea moss. Sea moss has become a very popular drink as a beverage, but also I want to say it has other very good uses. But let's just stick to the beverage. And everywhere you pass, you see coolers, you see sea moss. Even Benjo sea moss has a quite number of variety of sea moss, and Benjamin and the other players and the bigger players in the industry, and it's even being exported. But what many of us don't know is maybe 95% or more, 99% of all of this sea moss is imported, while we'd have the exact conditions where they are, like the countries they are imported from, to grow sea moss. Take it for granted, they have one or two advantages in terms of large coves and so on, that or bays, which Dominica do not have, but we do have the exact marine conditions for development of sea moss. So sea moss has traditionally been known to be more in the northeast of the island, Calibishi and so on. Where people talk about sea moss, where they would extract from the marine environment, the local species, which we call in our own scientific terms, the Gracilaria species, and they would dry it, and sell it, in very small scales, as cottage industries dry it and garbage at their home. And so we are from the ministry and the fisheries sector, we recognize, but why are we importing so much sea moss while the beverage itself and the market is growing tremendously? So we started a program to promote sea moss culture. And again, we started in the traditional areas like Calibishi, and then we moved to Woodford Hill. So currently we have free groups. But also we have done great strides in improving the quantity that they're propagating. And with some help from FAO, we now have an ongoing project. So instead of just depending on the grassy area, we have brought in a new species, which is faster growing, is more resistant to weeds growing around the sea moss. It has a higher gel yield. There are other benefits such as the wet to dry ratio, because as you know, you grow the sea moss is wet, but the product it has to be in its dry state, for the use and so on. And so we have done great strides in that, and we now have 3 main groups now operating. The Water Sea Moss group in Woodford Hill. We have the Calibishi, the women's group, doing very well here. We also have a group in Granby doing very well. And there are quite a number of individuals who are now asking for our intervention to come and to give them assistance to set up sea moss. So sea moss now is very exciting. These prospects are very good. And they have seen, since we have brought in the new varieties, it has comforted them, because this is a variety, unlike like before, it would take 8 weeks to 10 weeks. This variety you can harvest every 4 weeks to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And actually the capital investment for startup is relatively low. And so in all assessments, it's a very good product. It's a very good crop to invest in.
Considering the high percentage of imports, I just wonder what is your goal? Do you have a very ambitious goal to expand the production?
Yeah, so we do have a very ambitious goal to expand with the objective of reducing imports. Because once you have a high import, you are sending off your whatever money that you earn to a foreign country. So this is the first case. So our first major objective would be to reduce at least by 25%. Within the next 5 years, or even more where we can. First, and also we have a large clientele. A lot of the local sea moss that is produced mostly are purchased by the people in the diaspora. For some reason, they prefer to buy homegrown sea moss. So and you find sometimes the people on Dominicans on the outside sometimes pay a higher price than what a local juice maker, for lack of a better word, would want to pay. So you still find a lot of these sea moss is being exported, and then we have seen the increase in exports of sea moss. But at the same time, we still have to work towards the aim of reducing the imports by the main people who are engaging in the processing of sea moss beverages.
Mm-hmm. That sounds promising. Are there other areas that you're exploring in terms of mariculture?
Yes. What I will say is not actual products, but we assessments. And so as a question, I didn't want to be too early, but later in the year, because a lot of these things would require real technical expertise and advice, because a lot of them improves a lot of science and other type. Well, the sea moss has a low capital cost, but other type of mariculture can be capital intensive. So we have to make sure that the thing's right. So we'll be receiving technical support maybe in I think around the late August. We will have some technical experts coming to look at our environment from the University of Haifa in Israel. We are forging our relationships with people who have the expertise in this area, mariculture expert, and they will advise us. And because we need this advice so that we can relay to potential investors. We cannot just tell people to come here and grow this exotic species of fish, not having the proper information, about the water quality and the environment. What are the impacts what are the potential impacts to the environment? So we are really seeking support, technical support, from people that we are collaborating with in other institutions abroad, through other affiliations that we have on ongoing projects here. We have not even spoke about, from the science part, because a lot of people look at physical products and manufacturing things, as potential economic earners, but we also have great potential to in research and science. So one of the things that we have ongoing that we have not touched on is a science project that we have called SETI, Citation Translative Initiative, which is of a highly ambitious project, and that project is aimed at decoding the language of the whale. And they have done quite a lot of massive investments here and brought in a lot of technical expertise here, which have generated a lot of revenue for local people. They have people employed and so on. So I again just to touch on that, it is not only in the manufacturing area or growing of sea moss or growing of a specific species of fish, but the blue economy, an area which is promising, is promoting research and development, so that we not only need to sell products, but we could sell rights if new things are discovered, if for the project especially that we are doing, if new equipment is developed and it works well, of course, and if these things are sold, then Dominica can benefit from proceeds, and since that it was developed specifically for the project in Dominica. So I just want to say that do not rule out science and technology as a really potential area for economic generation and to stimulate economic activity.
You're tuned in to Focus on Government and Development. We're winding down with the Honorable Jullan Defoe, the Minister of State with responsibility for fisheries and the blue economy. Honorable Defoe, the lines have been going while you've been speaking. I think we have a caller on the line. Good evening. You have a question for the Minister?
It was just a comment, Leon. This is Steinberg.
Hi, Stein.
I just wanted to say how much I learned just sitting there, riveted to this exchange. So thank you very much for this interview. It has been excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stein. And, Minister, he's right. I mean, I have to admit to you that some of it I do find a bit highly technical, but I think that's because it's new information. And to many of us, we're not very familiar because, as we said at the top of the program, fisheries is not a sector that gets a lot of attention. So a lot of this is very new to us, and I wish we get another opportunity to really delve into some of these issues that you mentioned. But before our time runs out on us, we spoke about mariculture. I want to also touch on aquaculture and some of the advancements we may be making in that area.
Yes, great. And thank you for that too, because aquaculture is a developing sector. The entire aquaculture sector, as we knew it before, even though in its relatively small state, was wiped out by Hurricane Maria, 100% completely. And we have stalwarts in this sector like Mr. Roland Green, who had invested significantly in aquaculture at his property in Canefield. And he got a very hard blow for Erica, and he tried to stand on his feet again and got a very hard blow again for Maria. So I must mention him and heartfelt to him, because having worked with him throughout my lifespan, and I know that the efforts he has put in. So I just wanted to mention. So he was one of the stalwarts and producing giant freshwater prawns and other fish species, and even some exotic fish species. And I'm not talking about for aquarium trade. I'm talking about fish that can be consumed for food. So we have worked very hard. The fisheries and a small aquaculture unit at the fisheries division. If there is a definition of resilience, they added that definition after our facility in Jimit being wiped out. And with other challenges, we still continue now in 2022. But with a new focus. So we have reduced our capacity, but we were very dedicated towards resuscitating an aquaculture sector. So at this moment, we are focusing on the production of giant freshwater prawns and tilapia. And so at this moment, we have around 7 farmers. And by the end of April, we are hoping that we'll have around 10 farmers in production. And remember that I mentioned to you that, aquaculture is a capital intensive. So when you hear we have 7 farmers and soon we'll have 10 farmers, these are people who have put in a lot of investment. And it's because of the confidence that they have with the technical support that we're providing by our expert, Mr. Dorian Sanford. I cannot praise him so much. One man who has really took on this mantle. And when we talk about civil servants who are dedicated towards making things happen, I cannot be here tonight and not mention his name in leading the aquaculture sector, in innovation. And what we're doing, the government is providing so much support to these farmers because these farmers have made investment in their farm. And what we said to them as the state, as a government, we provide you with the seedlings, which is or what we call post-larvae. I don't want to be too technical. Okay, these are these small animals that they would have to grow into the adult one. And we are putting at a great cost, free of charge, to these farmers. As a commitment, if they make the investment, we will support them. So at this moment, we are supporting these 7 farmers. Our hatchery in Jimmy to have the potential to produce at least 480,000 post-larvae per batch. And so we have capacity for additional farmers. And I must say that the quality of our fingerlings or the post-larvae that we're producing is so good that it is attracting interest from neighboring countries such as Martinique and Guadeloupe, who are interested in purchasing post-larvae from us, because they know the quality and they have seen the quality that we are producing from our limited resources. But sometimes it's not only just the resources, it's the expertise and dedication of people like Mr. Sanford. So not only that we are now servicing the few farmers that we have, but we have potential now to our new business to provide post-larvae to our neighbors of Martinique and Guadeloupe, because we used to do so before post-Maria, a few years before Maria. We used to have chartered planes. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even know that, coming to Canefield to pick up French farmers to purchase post-larvae from our hatchery to stock their ponds in Martinique and Guadeloupe. And now that they heard that we are back and our hatchery is operating, they have already been linking us and extending to us their willingness to procure post-larvae from us. But we are not at this juncture as yet, because we need to support our local farmers first before we expand and provide this additional service to them. Of course, at a cost. Because in St. Lucia, a post-larvae costs 7 cents. In Martinique and Guadeloupe, it is 10 euros. And at any given time when we are delivering to farmers, we deliver at 50,000 post-larvae per farmers. Oh, wow. So you can see at least, you're between $4,000 to $5,000 that you are giving to a farmer to stock his farm, free of charge from the state as a contribution.
Yeah, as you said, very capital intensive. Minister, we've exhausted our hour, believe it or not, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to, if there's anything you thought we did not touch on that you really wanted to bring to the fore, this is your opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so just to finish off on the aquaculture, I just want to say, in addition to this direct government support, and again in collaboration, the government and FAO, we are providing additional support to farmers in the tune of almost $300,000, instead of helping them to dig additional ponds, give them some basic equipments, and to bring in the proper feed. Because one of the problems we have had is because of the scale of the sector, that the feed people engaged in the feed sector are not able to procure large quantity because of the demand. So we have brought in feed on the project, so farmers will now have the proper feed with the proper ratio of protein to help them with the animals that they currently have in stock. There are many things that we could say. It could last for 5 hours, but I mean, in closing, since the closing, I just want to say, that I'm encouraging the fisher folks who are out there to keep doing what they're doing. And I hope one day, I can get even colleagues from my cabinet to spend one day out at sea, to let them experience. Because, even last night, I came from the farmer's store. I arrived at Stowe at almost 9 o'clock, and there were 2 or 3 boats still out. And I met fishers, offloading their catch. So this is the type of job that they do, and we need people to appreciate more. Because you hear people complain about the price of fish, but I must let them know that the price of fish in Dominica is probably the lowest in the OECS. And the work is hard. And, operational costs sometimes can be high. So we have to support our fishers to improve their standard of living. You can see that now. We go to many landing sites now. You see, I'm proud to see GAs parked there, and you think it's farmers, but it is fishers who are out at sea. and then the fishers can go home to decent homes that they have built from the income they have built from fishing, which is, far apart from 30, 40 years ago. And this is the new direction, and we want our fishers to be respected. So I want to end, on really promoting the fishing sector and having appreciation for the potential which lies ahead, and while we move towards achieving and playing our part in the 700 million contribution to GDP by 2030.
You know what, Minister? I think the past hour is an indication that there's a lot in store for the fishery sector, and we are going to see many developments as we move through the next 5 years. So this is an open invitation to you to keep us informed and probably come back sometime very soon as you continue to develop your plans and implement your programs. I certainly look forward to some of these things coming to fruition, and I'm sure our listeners are very interested. So I really would love to have you back on this program.
I am always ready and willing.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
You've been tuned in to Focus on Government and Development. We were happy you could join us this Thursday evening. This is your invitation to join us again next week when we'll speak with Honorable Lakia Joseph. She's the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. She's concerned specifically with small business development. We'll hear so much more about that next week. You can look forward to that. We thank Honorable Jullan Defoe. So much new information, so much interesting information. This is what this program is about, bringing you up to date with government activity, government programs, or plans or policies, as we put our heads together to work towards your development. When we say your government is working for you, we're serious about that. You're invited to tune in every week to find out more. Do have yourselves a good evening. Your government is working for you. Find out how every Thursday on Focus on Government and Development. We'll explore the programs, plans, and policies in place to improve your lives. Hear from the policymakers and call in with your questions and comments. Focus on Government and Development, Thursdays 8 to 9 p.m. on DBS Radio and Kyrie FM.